us to record here, and I'm excited. So
All
here
right.
we are. How did it get to be the end of September already? So I'm really
Great.
excited that everybody that can join us live tonight, or those of you that are watching the recording. This is a YYC Rental Housing Providers Group. So our goal, as always, is just to bring on as many really information sharing, as many speakers, and just really open forum discussion. And I'm super excited to have Bruce Fraser here tonight. Bruce, when did we first meet? We've known each other for a few years, I guess now.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Probably met at a RAIN meeting, before anything else. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, it goes fast. So I'm really pleased because one of the things that I enjoy most with Bruce and his wife Trish is how quickly and how much they've grown in many different facets in real estate and in areas that a lot of us don't understand. So I'm really thrilled to be able to have the opportunity to talk to Bruce tonight. Of course, any of those that know me, again, I'm the chair of the YYC Rental Housing Providers Group, and we've been going strong now for, I think, nearly 4 or 5 years. I can't believe where the time goes, and really it's just that base of sharing that investment and wealth. My husband Phil and I are real estate investors, of course, as well, and we've been continuing to grow, pretty much staying with the residential suited model is our style that a lot of you have heard about. But tonight I want to give the floor over to Bruce, because most of you have heard me talk way too much, and I'd like to have the opportunity for Bruce to really share. So, I mean, Bruce, if you could start by giving an introduction overall to let us know a bit about you and Trish, and then we can kind of work through learning all these creative investment strategies you've used.
Sure. Okay. Well, thanks, Laura, and thanks for having me on. It's a real pleasure to be here. And I was just thinking about how we probably met, and we actually probably met through Trish. I think she joined your landladies group kind of way back.
I think one of the original meetings I remember meeting that came into when we were still the landladies group.
And she was talking about this, about this person who was really cool, and she's his stuff, and you guys get along really well and stuff. And then I would have run into you probably sometime later at a RAIN meeting or whatever. And then through Collaborate, we were both members of that and attended quite a bit of that. So yeah, so thanks for having me on. Yeah, just I guess a little background for people who don't know me, who I am, whatnot, and what my journey is. I've got almost 40 years in the oil and gas business, which is, of course, under massive attack and threat and stuff, and limping along right now. Most of it in the engineering side, and professional piping designer and draftsman by trade. Been contracted a lot of years, so I've had a corporate background, and I've run my own companies for a long time in my contracting business, which actually helped in my investment side a little bit. I guess 5+ years ago, I was in a management position with a national, actually a multinational oil and gas engineering, procurement, construction firm. And I was dutifully, I was a salaried guy at that point because I was in management, kind of doing my RSPs and whatnot and everything. And we had a financial advisor, been through a couple of them, and we started looking at some numbers and thought, hey, maybe we should look at retirement. I was about maybe mid-50s then, and I was saying, when do you think we could get out? And we started working some numbers and doing some projections, and we went, one thing about oil and gas engineering, it's extremely taxing, and it's like, I do not want to work until I'm 65 in this business, or 70. And I know guys in my industry who are still, checking drawings at 75 years old, and it's like, that can't be me. I just can't. So we were actually in, I think through our bank, we were invited to a Scott McGilvery event.
Okay.
Right, through Keyspire.
I did. And
yeah, so we actually got introduced to the concept of real estate investing, and we bought a package for the weekend, and we went through the weekend and got the fire hose on real estate investing. And we'll talk a little bit more about this later, but it wasn't just the buy and hold model and whatnot. They covered a whole range. including some of the alternative investments that we're involved in, and we managed to connect through some of those providers then as well. So that served us very well. So that kind of got us going. We bought our first house and suited it within, gosh, a few months, I'm thinking, and then our second one not too long after that, and our third one a year after that. Learned a lot on the way, made a lot of mistakes, whatnot, but we had come up with a type of model and a type of client that we were interested in. So, and that suits us well. We kind of stopped at just those 3 suited properties that we developed, and then really focused quite a bit on the passive side for there, and then always continued our education. We weren't really seeing the value in Keyspire, so we ended up going to REIN. Trish attended I think an SOS here in 2016 or something, and when the markets were really falling apart, and met Patrick and Don and all those guys over there and whatnot, and so we kind of switched gears and got over there and continued our education there. And then I ended up training as a real estate investment advisor through REIN, and then carried that on through Legacy to the Financial Life Professional Program, and just continued to just learn a lot about managing my own financial life and our goals and plans and whatnot. I'm a real detail guy. You know, being in engineering, I love my spreadsheets, so I plan, I track, I know where my numbers are and whatnot, and I think that really helped us in our investment career as well. So right now I'm still in the industry. I've bounced in and out during the hard times here a little bit, but I'm back with a national engineering firm in a management position again, just in the last couple of months. So I'm hoping to ride that out for the next 2 years maybe, and then pack it in, and then just
good for
go
you.
to Mexico, whatever. Yeah, disappear.
I love
we
that.
have a number, right? We have a number. So,
and the fact that you're reaching, like, I think there's so many things in there, Bruce, that you said that it's just gold. Is that you're not the only one that looks at a time and says, "Wait a second, we're not going to be where we want to be. What are we going to do about?" But you know what? Not enough people do something about it. Even attending those Keyspire events, the fact that within months of it, you actually pulled the trigger is pretty phenomenal, because we see it a lot where it's that analysis paralysis where you're not moving. So what do you think was the big difference for you and for Trish to be able to actually pull the trigger and do that so quickly?
I think getting that education, getting a background, and starting to work with a team, building a bit of a team together, and working with some people who had some experience. Our realtor was experienced with suited properties. He was a real estate investor. He had 16 doors or something as well. It just gave us the confidence to start going ahead. We liked the idea. One of the things we kind of learned from that first weekend, I guess, was who do we want our customer to be? Like what market do we want to be? The guy who did most of the presentation there was working out of Toronto and Hamilton and stuff, and he was all like, I want government welfare check guys, right? And because it's a steady income, and I don't care what it's. And I was like, yeah, we live in a decent house. I work in engineering. I want to deal with professionals and stuff like me. So we decided who our customer base wanted to be and what kind of model we wanted to generate when we're providing housing. So we bought houses that were less than 10 years old in reasonable neighborhoods, that were solidly middle class. Found places with empty basements and gutted them and did the legalized suite. Even before it was really a thing in Calgary, to put legal suite. We were one of the first. I think we're number 600 and change on our legal suite registries. So we were determined to really do it right. Probably spent too much money on the product, but our finishes were nice. We put in quartz countertops in our sinks, and we second bathrooms, and we did a really, really nice job. And now our tenants are enormously happy because they've got really solid product, and we're cash flowing very nicely and with a solid customer base. So for us, it was all about getting that customer base. And then I was fortunate enough, having spent a lot of time in a fairly lucrative business in a high paying industry, and I'm a fairly skilled in that industry, that we managed to pay our house off by the time this rolled around. So it was, and we were taught, debt's bad, right? Pay it all off, right? Well, I would now forget it. I'm in debt up to my eyeballs and loving it because I'm using other people's money, right? To finance my income streams. But we leveraged the equity out of our house to do a lot of this work, and we were fortunate enough to be able to do that.
Okay.
And did a refi and pulled some back and the next one and stuff. So using that model, again, it was just a matter of, I don't know, having enough education and being driven by this realization that I can't work until I'm 70 in this industry. It will kill me. It is very high stress. I don't want to do it. We got to roll the dice and get this done. And we were convinced that the returns were there, and then it was worth the effort to get it done. So yeah, so not a lot of analysis, but enough to assure us that we were, that we weren't gonna fail miserably and lose our shirts.
No, and you've seen that in your own results already, and I think that's key, because too often do we hear the bad story, and so looking at that, I think last month we actually did focus on your ideal tenant profiling, and one of the questions in there was, as much as you set up that ideal tenant profile, does that tenant actually want to live in the house that you have or that you're buying? Because that's key. Like when you talked about your finishes and those things, that's attracting, and how many properties like those, especially suited homes in a level of still affordability, even exist. Like I would think very, very unique profile, and I'm sure zero vacancy rate.
It is, yeah. And I think we've had 1 month open, and that's just because we were doing some renos and painting and tearing out carpets and stuff, in the 5 years that we've had our doors. Trish does all the property management and the tenancies, and she's done a great job. But we turned over 5 of our places in COVID, like in this past spring, and I think we've upgraded our clients to even nicer ones, and done really well. And yeah, when Trish sets that market, like there's not a lot out there. We're down in Mackenzie Town, so we're seeking, professionals working at the Seton Hospital, or retirees, or people who are working down there and who are maybe used to a reasonable middle class kind of existence. And we're getting some pretty strong people who nobody bailed during COVID. They were all working. Nobody skipped their rent. It was great. So we just kind of sailed through.
Well, and that's the plan that you wanted, because the whole point is that, real estate is not meant to be exciting. It's meant to be set. You set a goal, you went after it really, really quickly.
Yeah.
It sounds to me like you got that kind of corner. And, because I do a lot of work in suited, maybe in different styles, but fairly similar ideas. What I'm really curious is how you made, or when you made the jump to start getting into other strategies. So it's like you started out on there, did that very successfully. What made you, or why did you look at others, or how does that segue into maybe sharing a little bit about other strategies that you're involved in?
Yeah, so it was sort of it was all sort of a parallel stream. So when we really looked at the numbers, and I looked at the returns I was getting in the markets, and I was not a sophisticated investor. I was like probably 90% of the people out there. I was dumping my RSP deductions off my paycheck into a mutual fund, and getting my 4 to 6% a year, and paying 2.5% in fees, and every time my broker made a deal for me, he made more money than I did, and I just wasn't seeing the level of growth that I needed. I mean, again, I'm a spreadsheet guy. I did that projection out, and I went, this is not happening. So we sought areas of greater return, and one of them was buy and hold real estate long term. And that was part of the strategy. And for us, and for me personally, it's always been the goal is to have a healthy retirement. That's I've worked a lot of years, very hard, a lot of hours in a very intense business, and I like to have some adventures. Trish and I were just up at Jasper on the weekend for our 29th wedding anniversary.
Oh,
and I climbed the mountain, and we were out stomping around canyons and and stuff, you know, and waterfalls, and it was awesome, and we loved doing that kind of stuff together. We love to travel, and you know, and I want to make that a larger part of my life. I scuba dive, have surfed. I love the water. I love to snorkel and beaches and stuff, and we, you know, we've been slowly kind of exploring different parts of Mexico as to maybe a permanent snow place, a snowbirding place, or maybe even a move. So it was always, you know, Rain talks about your Belize, you know, and then what your goal is, what your dream is. And for me, it's always been, you know, a beach and a hammock, you
Yeah.
know, really,
I'll
you know,
see you
and just,
there. I'm
yeah,
totally
you know,
there.
and being able to leverage some of this into a lower cost center, right? You know, as well, and you know, and then leaving the legacy for our kids. We've got two girls. So we kind of structured ourselves that way. So the, you know, the buy and hold was one half, and then through Keyspire we were introduced to a couple of investment firms out east, and we were considered accredited investors at the time. So we had an avenue in. We had that introduction, and I was in a fairly high salary position at that point. So we were able to be exposed to other types of investments. So we moved a lot of what I had in registered funds, which was a, you know, reasonable amount, but still not enough to retire on. Right, just wasn't going to get me there. As I said, you know, I've got a number in mind. When I hit it, that's when I phone my boss and say bye. Right, you know,
Perfect.
so we knew we could get better returns by going into some of these vehicles. And so it was a real parallel strategy for us, but it encompassed this larger method of planning. Like, it started with a real honest assessment, a real grind down of where we were, what our spending was, what our budgets were, what our available equity was, you know, what kind of returns we needed to get, you know, a realistic number. Looking at taxes, I mean, everything, the legacy corporate structure. It was we've taken a real broad view, and in my mind, that's a healthy approach. You can't, oh, I'm going to invest in real estate. You know, that's kind of a recipe for disaster. You kind of got to know where you're going, and then find out how to get there. So, you know, we set that goal, we had that target in mind, and then so we started running these things in parallel, and we're still there. On the passive side, we have some very long-term development deals, like inside our TFSAs and RSPs and whatnot. So using mostly our registered funds in there, that are like in Toronto, they're developing, you know, 500 townhouses and stuff, and it's a long-term thing. Or we've got some syndicated mortgages through another organization out there. We've got some in real estate investment trusts, in REITs as well, and we also hold several private mortgages, private second position mortgages on properties that are mostly in Alberta and BC.
It's like all
So
these topics here, Bruce, are like key. Like, I could just tell for those that are on live and those that are going to listen later, it's like some of this is just going to be opening people's eyes to, like, how do they get involved, or how do you know which one? Like, you literally just mentioned 4 different strategies.
yeah,
And I'm wondering if maybe, I don't know what works best for you, but to break down a little bit more on each one, and maybe the value to it, like talking about those development deals long term and using registered funds. I mean, that's something that I've never gotten involved in. So, you know, I don't even know what to ask to be like, how do you find them, and what does that return look like, and, you know, how are you managing those? So if you could break them down
sure.
in layman's
Well,
terms, right?
yeah. So we were, you know, when we were at Keyspire, and I was still in my first management position there. We were introduced to a couple of their sponsors, kind of like you'll see Dominic Mandano at a Rain event, or Access Capital, or something like these guys, right? You know, so there's a couple of groups out of Toronto, one that's Pro Funds, and another one which is Greybrook. And Greybrook's a big developer out there. They do everything from, you know, high rises in Miami to you know, 40-story condo units in Toronto, and this 178 acre townhouse development. So you know, the returns look fairly attractive. One thing we did do was you know, you got to do your homework. You can't just go, oh wow, it's going to give me 20%. Here's my money. You know, we had a lawyer look at all the arrangements and whatnot, and you know, the guys who were doing these developments, they end up making the most money because they're doing a lot of the work, and they're putting a lot in. You know, they take a fair slice. But you know, if I can get, you know, 15 points on a long-term deal, or 20, and you know, and you've got to weigh long-term. You're not compounding long-term, right? So you're not reinvesting and upping. So, but you just got to just do your homework. Sometimes you're reading a 120-page prospectus, and it's, you know, or you know, give it to a lawyer. It's worth $500 for a lawyer to say, look at this deal. What do you think? And there are guys out there who work with accounting firms and investment firms who are pretty familiar with these types of deals, and then it's, you know, you do your own judgment too. Like if you're looking at development or mortgages in a particular area, use some of those REIN, you know, what's behind the curtain kind of data points, and the top 10 cities kind of thing, and you look at neighborhoods, you look at demographics, like all those things that you would use if you were going to do a buy and hold in a neighborhood. You apply those same rules to a development. We've connected with a fellow out in BC who's doing a development in Oliver, and doing some work out there. I've got friends in Oliver. I phoned them up. I said, hey, what's this location like? What's the site? What's happening in the town? What's going on? You know, so, you know, we got some feedback and whatnot. And he says, yeah, you know, it's a killer location. It's right by the river. The city's just passed a new development program over the next 5 years where they're going to revitalize X, Y, and Z neighborhoods. Great. You know, let's go ahead. So those, you know, for development, that's really, you need to apply those same due diligence as if you were just buying a single property yourself, right?
Because there's still no guarantees. Like, I mean, we've seen a lot of developments fail or get held back, or, you know, certainly go under. There's a lot of different,
and there's delays. Like one of our long-term ones, it's delayed 1.5 years now. Well, all that's doing is watering down my investment, right? So instead of getting X percent over, you know, this year's, I'm getting the same return but over a longer time period. So that's actually diluting my annual ROI. Now the numbers were pretty impressive to begin with. They're still good, but again, I come back and adjust my projections in my spreadsheets to accommodate that, right? So, and I keep on top of that. And those aren't just buy and hold and forget things. You need, you know, you're going to get quarterly reports. You're going to, you know, contact the developers and say, what's happening, what's going on? Did you get your permits? You know, did you dig a hole and, you know, find a dead something and now you have to move, or, you know, yeah.
You find in those deals that that they're looking, like when you talked about accredited investors and some of those development deals, in that aspect, are you a large enough investor, or do you need to be a certain size investor to be making those phone calls and asking those questions?
No, once you're in the deal, you have you're a shareholder, and you have every right to ask anything you want and to contact anybody. Now some of these deals are available for what would be called an accredited investor, and accredited for the most part. And these are kind of off-market deals, right? So they're run through a third-party broker. They're not Securities and Exchange Commission regulated, but they do have their own set of regulations. So if you're an accredited investor, you have to have either a minimum amount of income or a minimum amount of funds available to invest, like in your investment portfolio. Then you could be an eligible investor, which is kind of a second tier down. And some of these projects are only available to accredited investors. It assumes a certain level of sophistication and a certain level of income and size of portfolio, so that if it were to go belly up and you were to lose, you wouldn't be declaring bankruptcy and living off the government, right? Yeah. So
They still have to
it's just,
caution that even though it's
yeah.
not specific Securities Commission, but they are able to use your registered dollars. So technically those dollars, if I understand correctly, remain actually in the RSP.
In the registered funds. Yeah.
CFA. And so can you explain a little bit on how that works?
Sure. So there's you know, you have RSPs with, you know, Scotia McLeod or with, you know, CIBC, Wood Gundy, or any of these kind of brokerage houses, right? So there are two main trusts, trust companies in Canada. One called Olympia Trust, which is here in Calgary actually, and then there's Community Trust, oddly enough, which is out in Toronto. Some of the investment and development firms that we are tied in with use one, and some use the other. So we've got funds kind of in both places, and essentially they act as trustees for the funds. They hold your funds in trust for the mortgagee or for the developer or whatever. If there's interest coming back, they process that into your cash account. And then charge a certain monthly fee and transaction fee and whatnot for that, and you take that into account. It's not a huge number, you know, $12.50 a month or something, but you know, if you're getting you know, a 12 or plus% return, you know, then that's really negligible, right? You know, it's, right. That's well worth it. And compared to a 2.5% MER on a mutual fund, that's nothing, right? So they manage that for you, and you know, you log in online, and you can track, you know, every the 20th of every month, I open up my spreadsheets, and I open up my accounts in there, and Trish's accounts in there, and we check her, you know, and I add the numbers together, and I, you know, see where we're going, and track away. It's just one of my fun things. I know it sounds a little weird, but well, I really get a kick out of it.
I think you're in the right place. I think you're in the right place for that. Like I said, for those that'll be listening now and later, either way, I think that's definitely the tracking component. I know that's something you've mentioned quite a bit. You know, and I guess we don't have to make things, and what I really enjoy so much of what you've been sharing already is you don't have to make it more complicated than it needs to be, is what I'm hearing, is that, you know, it's a matter of doing our own due diligence, but then also working with team and working with other professionals, working with these companies or whatever you call trust companies. Mm-hmm. They know what they're doing on that side. So
yeah, they're just acting as the intermediary, just like your Wood Gundy brokerage or Scotia McLeod brokerage or whatever. They're just providing, they're acting as a holder of those funds in trust for you, right? So so you know, if I was to supply somebody with a mortgage, this is the trustee that handles that transaction and handles the payments coming back and keeps it within my registered realm. So if I have an investment within my TFSA, that grows within that TFSA, same as the RRSPs, right? So yeah, so it's just because these are non exchange products, right? They're not on the exchange. Then they need to be handled through a separate trust.
And so how does that differ? Or sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just so that's like the development, which I'm still going to probably take some time to wrap my head around, and I'm sure we'll have lots of questions that'll come through too, either now or later in our chat on the Facebook group. What's the difference then on that? And this is where probably, again, everybody will bear with my own ignorance here on the difference of the REIT. So like those ones are like development deals. You're getting in and out in a period of time, I'm assuming, yep, with a set amount. And right. So where would a REIT, how would that differ?
So a REIT, and I've just started to change my strategy a little bit now, and just started to invest. There's two REITs that I've been that I'm just recently connected with. So a real estate investment trust is essentially a group of investors. It works a little bit more like a mutual fund. Okay. Where a mutual fund will invest in different companies and whatnot, and different terms and different sectors. A REIT will pool investors' funds and resources and invest in different properties. They will hold real estate, right? And it could be office buildings, it could be residential, it could be commercial, it could be whatever. They could probably have a cash component as well for doing further investments. So one of them is a Canadian fellow who's has 7,800 doors in smaller multifamily non-core buildings, in a lot in Southern Ontario, BC. He's in Texas. He's a little bit in Calgary, but he's all, like neighborhoods like Killarney or Bankview, or out of the core, and non kind of condoized thing, and just purpose built 4-story walk up kind of things, whatnot, bread and butter kind of things. And he's just got a pile of these doors, and he does really, really well with them. And he has a projected return of between 7 and 12% over time. He pays 7% a month, and then but has never slipped under, I think, 13 or 14, right? On an annualized basis, but conservatively, that's what he's counting on. The nice thing about the REITs is you can compound, you can reinvest your profits. So I have a certain amount invested. I get my 7% payment on a month, and I can flip it right back in and buy more units. So it's kind of like a mutual fund where you can start to compound your investment. I don't need to be drawing cash out of my investments right now. I'm fortunate enough to be working, and I have a steady income stream, so I can let them grow. So my strategy is now changing a little bit from, let's put some away and collect it in 8 years or 4 years or 2 years or whatever, or have a mortgage that's just going to develop a cash account, to something. And then I'm going to, once that matures, I'll have to take that and find some other vehicle for it. The advantage now with these products is that I can just reinvest month after month after month after month after month and start compounding within that vehicle. So as I get closer to retirement,
like on those REITs, Bruce, there's no set time, like how long you want to invest, like you said, similar to a mutual fund.
They like to, it's kind of like a back end mutual fund. They like to have a 3-year commitment up front before there's any penalty to withdraw. If you close your account with 3-year money ahead of the time, there would be a little penalty on that. Okay. And most of them are like that. It's like, commit to us for a few years and grow and whatnot, because they're using your money to buy more properties, right? And to continue to invest and to do their maintenance and management and all that of the properties that they run.
Well, because real estate isn't generally liquid. That's one of the risks in real estate. But yet, when using some of these strategies, essentially you can create it to be a little bit more liquid if need be.
You can. Yeah. And certainly within the REITs and some of these kind of ongoing perpetual sort of vehicles, you really can. Yeah.
Well, and I'm sure even, right when you mentioned like the 7,800 doors, I'm like, wow, amazing. So, I mean, I wonder, and not to take, but maybe a little bit to take from your expertise on after how much or what you might be willing to share in, I know personally, I would be really excited to connect and invest into a REIT with someone with 7,800 doors. So I'm sure that's going to be on everyone's mind while you're sharing these amazing returns is, guess what? A lot of other people are going to want to be involved. So, I just leave it out there, Bruce, that for what you might be open to share, maybe on the Facebook group after, a couple of links or a couple of company names would be, very much.
Yeah, I certainly could. And people are free to contact me anytime. We can just have a private conversation, and I'm more than willing to share, contacts in there. It's no real secret,
Well, it's hugely valuable. And so I appreciate that, because I think that, people will want to reach out, Bruce, and maybe get a little bit more specifics, in regards to that. And I just think it's so interesting in just your ability and your level of involvement in a number of these strategies that some of us are, maybe like I've been a real estate investor for, over 10 years. And, I've actually not gotten into any of these other different strategies, interestingly enough. So, and you would think, well, maybe I'm strategic or seasoned, but, a lot of the times we don't. We get set, or the fear seems to always be a case. And so I really value, you sharing and just looking at this in a really open, like you said, planful opportunity of just looking at the numbers is what I'm hearing.
Yep. Yeah. You know, and it's a matter of, I mean, for us, and because I'm working, and I'm in engineering, I'm in this intense business, I can't take on that many doors. We like to self-manage because we like to know our clients. And you know, and Trish has been working off and on and whatnot, and you know, she's a millwright specialist and knows her windows and doors and coverings and stuff inside and out. And she just finished her first flip actually during COVID. so we you know, she took a stab over at that too, and we made a little money on it. It was great. And you know, so when the market, you know, when opportunities come up, we'll dive into one of those as well. But that's very active, right? So there's active investing, and I know that's what you and Phil are involved in, and he's kept busy, and you know, and you guys self-manage still, I assume.
Yep.
And you know, like, that's a lot of work that keeps you going all the time, right? So me with the full-time job, and it just wasn't something that I could really pursue beyond, you know, kind of what we have. So I still want to make better returns than my mutual funds. I have this little bundle. Well, let's keep in the real estate space, but let's look at this on the passive side as well. So I looked for products that would give me maybe not quite the same level of returns as long-term buy and hold, because if you got a cash flowing property, that's if you're doing it right, those are great numbers. But it's a lot of work. Like it really is. You got to be on the ball. It's not just, you know, put somebody in and forget about it and call them a year later and, hey, you want to renew your lease, right? I mean, stuff breaks, right? and neighbors are nasty, and you know, I mean, there's always stuff going on, right? You know, and our places are you know, a 70-kilometer round trip from our house, so it's a long haul to go down.
Wow,
and, you know,
right?
fix a toilet or something, right? So yeah, so it's just where our model and price point lined up, right? So we live on the west side in Cougar Ridge, and our places are down in Mackenzie Town.
Right.
So for us, it's just really important to have that balance of passive and active investments. And as I move closer to retirement, we're probably going to shift. You know, we're still going to hold our properties for the next foreseeable future. Certainly not going to sell anything in this market. But we'll look to keeping more of that space in on the passive side. Right. And as we get closer to retirement, as I, you know, snowbird, I'm going to disappear for, you know, 4 or 5 months of the year, or maybe buy a little condo in Mexico. I mean, we have this place in Manzanillo called the Vita Del Mar is just stunning. There's nothing like it on the Pacific coast. It's extraordinary. And little condos down there are, you know, they're not bad. Like they're pretty cheap. So we're like, yeah. Well, 3 swimming pools, and you know.
Oh, and you're speaking to the right group, because you know, I know a lot of the members in this group. I've, you know, got to know people over the years for a long time, and I think, you know, we talked about lifestyle and travel and you know, honestly, things being easy and low risk, because that's the reason why people don't do things most of the time is for fear, and then the secondary piece would be the amount of work that you need to do. So shifting into passive style of investing, I think, is a very huge interest to our members. You also mentioned mortgages, and you mentioned mortgages in 2 ways: that a syndicated and the private second position. And I'm very curious if you could give us a little bit of light on that whole world, because that sounds risky to me.
Well, yeah, in a way it is, and you know, I mean, you want low risk, you're going to get low returns, right? Yes. You want higher returns, you're going to have some higher risk, and investing in a buy and hold property is higher risk. It's a lot of work, et cetera. And the same with these deals. There's no guarantees here. But again, if you take the same approach, right? So we do have, actually, we only have 1 syndicated mortgage remaining, and it's coming due. It's about to be bought out here. It's been supposed to be bought out in April, and it's still month to month to month, but I get a 0.5% bonus every month now when it gets delayed. So fine, go ahead, pay me. You know, the property is worth 30 odd million, and there's a $16 million mortgage on it. But this was a syndicated group now of investors who basically bought a chunk of land. It was almost like a development deal, but instead of being part of the development and construction loan pool group of money, it was a mortgage taken on the property, which then had a secondary financing stream to do the build. So this is a building in Milton, Ontario. A bunch of retail and medical offices underneath with residential on top. They went from 3 floors. They got rezoned. Now they can do 5. So they're like, ooh, rebuild, right? So that's delayed some of the it's held it, but it's paying me. It paid me 7% monthly with a 7% buyout at the end. Okay. So all in all, it'll be 14. So I got 7% deferred. So I'm going to get a nice big chunk of cash coming back when that thing eventually comes out. So I've been getting my 7 points every month into my RSP cash account, which I've then used to put into other places, and and this one will go. So that's more how they're structured, and this is out of ProFunds and in Toronto. And they do a lot of their deals this way, where they'll offer you can either take 7% flat fee up front and then milk the rest, or you can defer and you can take some of that fee and reinvest it right away. So it in effect bumps that rate a little bit because you get to leverage and compound that a little bit. Or if you're not in a hurry and you just want to let it ride, you can defer and get a nice present coming out the back end, which is what we should get coming up the next month. So those types of things are available there. I'm not seeing as many of them as I used to, but again, this was a happening little Ontario town, a great chunk of land, great flow through on a main drag, a park in behind it, good solid construction plans, a forward-thinking municipal council who was for development, so Carmen from ProFunds is a real smart investor, a real smart cookie, and she knows that Southern Ontario market really, really well. So, it was like kind of a no-brainer for this one. On the private side, I'm sure you know Konstantin Kuligin here, right? So he's we've worked with him on several of our private mortgages, and this is a higher risk to be sure, but the returns are solid. I'm getting 15% on most of these second mortgages, 16 on one, I think. And the thing is again, what's that property, right? What's my loan to value between the first and the second mortgage? And I would never go over 80%, right? I always leave that chunk of equity, and anything goes south, I want to have some equity in that house, right? And maybe usually about 75. There's a lot of people, unfortunately, who are very poor managers of their money, and they've maybe had a business not do well. They haven't paid their GST to the government, or they haven't paid their taxes to the government, or they've had a divorce, or they've whatever, or they've gone into debt and they bought a boat when they shouldn't have, and they did stupid things with their credit cards, and they got bad credit, and they just can't get any money, and they can't get out from under, right? So and they got to put up their house. They got to take a second mortgage on their house. So maybe they've got 40% equity now, and they say, okay, well, let's borrow another 20%. Let's take care of the government. Let's take care of the credit cards and whatnot. So what a guy like Konstantin does, he'll go in and he'll work with them and say, okay, well, here's the deal. I'll find an investor for you, but we are going to have a written agreement that the money is going to go to the CRA, to Visa, to Toyota, to your Kudu bill, and all this is going to get paid off, and this is all in the documentation. Okay. So, and it's specific, and then it's an interest-only deal for the term. Usually they're 12 months, renewable. Okay. And the idea is that let's get them on their feet, and then they can go back to their first mortgage provider, refi for the whole amount, and then I get out.
Because they'll be able to qualify because
Then they'll be able to qualify because they're not in a debt up their eyeball. Yeah. And meanwhile, they're paying me a pretty serious return.
But less than the interest on their credit cards.
Less than the interest on their credit cards, and no penalties through CRA and whatnot and everything. So it's kind of a win-win. Now, and I've had a couple people go NSF on their payments. Constantine's great. He makes a phone call. I have the payment and a fee for the NSF in my account the next day.
Wow.
This has happened a handful of times, and he's always been right on the ball.
Okay.
Very briefly, just what would happen if one of these went south, and he says 2.5% to 3% of them actually do, is that because I am on title as the second mortgage holder, if they start to default on my payments, I'm the guy they're going to default to. They're not going to default to the Royal Bank on their first mortgage. They're going to pay that mortgage, right?
Right.
They're going to, you know, if they have to give up one, they're going to dump me. But legally, I'm entitled to foreclose on their house.
You can take
because
over.
I'm on title.
So you can take over and make the first position payment.
And I could make the first position payments, keep them whole. It'd be a big pain in the butt, and I'd have to, you know, clean up and do the eviction, get the lawyers and the whole 9 yards. It would cost me something. But this is why I have at least 20% equity in the house. And if I have a nice, you know, $800,000 unit out in Cochrane or something, I'm not too worried about it. I can sell it for 10% under market value in a week, right? Okay. Cover realty fees, everything, and probably make my money back plus what I'm owed plus a little bonus. Yeah. So risk is relative. Risk equates to how much work you're willing to put into it, and you know, your lawyers.
Well, and I love that
right?
because it's so true, and in everything that we do. What I also liked so much is that whole difference between this active versus passive. One of my jokes, or one of the things I share about, is that there really is no passive income, no such thing, because you're still managing these. You're still not at the same level. You don't have to find tenants. You don't have to do repairs, but you're still making sure that the checks went through the bank, that there's no NSFs, that the property, you're doing your due diligence. So I think that's the mistake a lot of investors make as well, is that they consider their passive investments too passive, and they're not actually following through on standard due diligence and you know, insurances on that part. So you mentioned when we had a talk the other day, because I realized it's getting close to 7 o'clock.
Wow.
I know, it goes so fast. We're learning so much.
No kidding.
And I'm sure there's going to be lots of interest and lots of people reaching out to you. But you had really shared a lot about and you've said it today too, but just that whole value of having that financial plan, having those things right, so that you're not just kind of throwing things out to the air. Yeah. So share a little bit, Bruce, about maybe what you're looking for, or how you would help a fellow real estate investor or someone interested. You know, what would you do, or what should people reach out to you for?
Well, you know, I'm just kind of sharing my experience, and you kind of have to have the bad news before you get the good news, right? So, you know, the way, and certainly the way I've been trained as a financial life professional, and through Legacy and through REIN and whatnot. Although I don't really engage in this kind of work too much, because engineering just, it kind of blows me up, and that's enough. But if I was to work with somebody, it would be like, first, let's just look at everything. I need somebody to be really honest. Let's look at your accounts. Let's look at your equity. Let's look at your investments. Let's look at your returns. Let's look at your spending. Let's look at your goals. What do you know, really, where do you want to get to? And then, you know, as well as I, there's lots of strategies. There's money that can be found to do things with, right? You know, I mean, a little bit of equity can go a long way. You can leverage out what you have and make it work, either in the active or the passive side. So it's like, okay, well, you know, in order to get, you know, where you want to be, and that's the first conversation. And then, you know, if you listen to, you know, to Richard, he'd say, okay, yeah, triple it for where you'd like to be, and then multiply by 10 for Grant Cardone, right? Right.
That's me. Yeah.
And that's you, right? Yeah, exactly, right. You know, I don't need to get there, and I'm okay not getting there. I'm quite close now to where I really want to be and be comfortable, and I work hard enough,
That's
right?
amazing.
But
And such congratulations on that too, right? Like
thank
that's
you. Yeah.
amazing to be there.
Yeah, and it's really, the past 5 years has really made that difference in getting into this space. So yeah, the first thing to do is find out where you're at, find out where those opportunities are, and then start your planning. Legacy's done a great job developing this program that just assesses your own risk tolerance, your personality, what you're really set up for, and then setting up some accountability to really get things going. Richard's got this white paper that just tells you, disasters can happen. Stuff can fall apart in a hurry. Are you prepared? And do you have insurance? We've got this kind of Bible, this book that I have in a safe in my basement. It has all of my accounts, all of my passwords. Do you have a will? Do you have power of attorneys? Trish and I've gone through this whole thing. And where are your investments? What are your holdings? And I update this thing as I change, right? It's all in pencil because things change and adapt, right? If we get hit by a bus tomorrow, our kids got to know what's going on. So part of this whole move to retirement and creating this legacy, for our kids and whatnot is being really, really well organized. And I think that's where, some of that training has helped. And it's combined with my own natural tendencies to spreadsheet everything. That's kind of my big, Jungian blue energy coming out, right? Because I love to keep track of stuff. So yeah, if somebody really wanted to, help getting that organized, I'd be more than willing to just help them kind of track out. And there's a lot of material available for me through that FLP program. That's really, really helpful, and can get people going, because it's not just about, oh wow, I can make 15% over here in a mortgage. Look at the big picture. Have a grander plan, and then work it, right? Then just work it.
Well, and you see that in the difference that I always often say, the difference of successful investors, whether that's in real estate or otherwise. The biggest difference that I've always noted is having that plan, being organized, tracking, having strategy, having a plan, where those that, like you said, are just jumping without a plan, which I mean, I can even say in my younger years that I did myself in the same aspect. We're told RSPs are good. So, we dump a bunch of money in RSPs without even realizing where does that really land in my actual tax strategy? Is it really a value? Am I actually making a difference? And is the difference enough that I'm getting a return? Because, obviously as well, I work and I think that real estate and finances is such a married together so well, because I also, working as a financial advisor, see those same aspects where people aren't even paying attention.
Yeah, and your average financial advisor doesn't know anything about real estate. They're scared of it. They've been trained to go down this one road, which makes them and their brokerage money, right? That's their motivation, right? Whereas you and I, we're like Don Campbell. We want to go out there and we want to share this with people. Like, this is awesome. Like, you have no idea. Everyone. Like, be the big, and then never, not to mention stuff like the Smith maneuver. Right, with your mortgage. Anybody who's getting a new mortgage on their house, talk to us about the Smith maneuver. And then Trish and I learned about a new one a week or so ago called the Ninja maneuver within your TFSA, and that's very, very interesting. And it has to do with private lending. So if you get into a point where you're doing private lending out of your TFSA, there's a way to generate massive returns in there, and I'll just tease that out there. Anybody wants to find out a little bit more, they can get a hold of us.
I'm sure you'll hear from it right away. Because, all of those things. Everybody's going to be searching this up and reaching out. So I'm thrilled to have had you on tonight. The time goes by so quickly. I guess in the last kind of minute here, for anyone on live, I had posted out for any questions, so we didn't see any live questions. But what we'll do is I'll leave I'm going to put this recording up on the Facebook group in our YYC Rental Housing Providers, and hopefully let's continue the conversation there. So I'll monitor the chat. We'll make sure that Bruce, I'll get you, I'll either post it or if you can post your information on there, and just so that people can reach out. What's the best method do you prefer? Email? Like, you're a busy guy, so if people want to reach out with some questions, what would be the best method for you?
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to type my email in here.
Perfect. And I can just see that's the first question that just came out in the chat. So we are on top of it. We're on fire tonight. Was the first question was, how do they reach you? So that's super. And I'll take that info as well from here, and I'll make sure I post it in our group.
Sure. They can reach me at bruce@franlin.ca. And that's in Franlin Enterprises. That's our corporate structure and whatnot. And we suite houses and our design side and everything. And, you know, we dabble in all kinds of stuff too. So
well,
anybody wants a basement suite designed, I can draft up your plans for you.
And I'll be coming there once we're done all the legalization of existing and start moving into.
Yes. Yeah. And that's a whole other thing that I'm involved in as well that we didn't even really touch on. And, but that's sort of a time permitting thing for me, because it's fairly time intensive, but I love doing that too. And I've worked with several investors, in town, helping them legalize their existing suites and stuff. So that's fun.
Perfect.
Calgary's doing, well with that. Yeah. And I know you've taken advantage of that amnesty for a bunch of yours as well.
Absolutely. And we've been pretty much kind of leading and supporting investors and getting that done. That's in this group. We've done a lot of that piece as well. But when we're ready to go on the building code side, that's the part where I'm excited to pick your brain too. So that I could talk to you for another hour, but I know we don't have the time. But again, I just want to thank you so much, Bruce, for taking the time to come on and really sharing such a wealth of information. Like I said, there's going to be loads of questions, I'm sure, coming through, and we'll probably need to have you come back out and even break down some of these things a bit further someday. But
yeah, anytime. Yeah, you bet. No, it's been really good, and I just like to encourage people out there. There's really bunches of different ways to get this done, but just get it done. Take that assessment, set those goals, work your numbers, and figure it out. If you want some help, I'd be glad to help you. Just get going on it. You really can achieve the kind of numbers that you're after, and you can reach the goals that you're setting.
Oh, amazing. I love that. And man after my own heart, because that's what I'm often saying as well. So thank you so much, Bruce. And everybody, good night. And we'll have lots of questions, I'm sure, afterwards.
All right.
Super. All right. Have a great night, guys. Thank you.
Thanks. Good night, Laura. Good night, everybody.